Hello and welcome. Today we are talking about the Insta360 Go 3, specifically its battery. How much recording time can you really get out of it? How quickly can you recharge it? And what else do you need to know about the Go 3's battery? Well, stick around and let's find out. Now, one thing about the Insta360 Go 3 is that it has a fixed battery, so you cannot just swap it out when it's run down. So it's all the more important to understand how much recording time you can get out of the battery, and also when it's depleted, how long is it going to take you to charge it back up so you can be up and running again. So what do we know about the battery of the Insta360 Go 3? Well, first off, capacity. According to Insta360, the capacity of the Go 3 camera is 310 milliamp hours, and the capacity of the battery in the Action Pod is 1270 milliamp hours. As far as the runtime is concerned, Insta360 says you will get 45 minutes of runtime out of the camera in its standalone configuration, or by placing it into the Action Pod, you can get up to 170 minutes of runtime. Now, these specifications are based on testing done at recordings at 1080p resolution, so presumably if you run higher resolution, you will see lower runtimes, and that's definitely something we're going to be testing. As far as charging is concerned, Insta360 says you can charge up the camera from 0 to 80% in 23 minutes and to 100% in 35 minutes. And the Action Pod can be charged to 80% in 47 minutes or to 100% in 65 minutes, although it's not clear whether that is on its own or combined with the camera. So again, that's something we're going to be testing out today. So in today's video then, we're going to be testing to see how much recording time we can get using different video conditions and having the camera in its standalone mode or in combination with the Action Pod. And then we're going to do some testing on recharging the battery in pretty much every situation that I can think of. Now there's a lot to cover here, so as usual I'll place the chapters up here and on the video timeline. And before we get started, important to mention that this video is not sponsored, paid for, or influenced in any way. I have zero connection with Insta360. I purchased all of the equipment with my own money, and the opinions are entirely my own. So, let's do some testing. Okay, so here is my test setup. I have the camera mounted to the face of the clock here. It's going to be filming itself in the mirror. I have the camera set to the quick start mode, so as soon as I hit the button, it's going to power on and start recording. And of course, we're going to see exactly how long it is able to record. We're going to repeat this experiment using different video modes and basically see how long we can get. Now, obviously, I can just look at the length of the clip we get, and of course we'll do that, but let's face it, this is more fun, right? So let's just wait until the clock gets to 12, and we're going to hit that start button. That should just about do it there. And off we go. Okay, so same test again, but now we have the camera mounted inside the action pod. According to Insta360, we should be able to get close to 3 hours of recording time at 1080p. Once again, as soon as I hit the record button, it will power on and immediately start recording. So I guess we'll wait for it to get to the 12 o'clock mark and then we'll see what we get. So, as far as the runtime tests are concerned, I think we were pretty much able to confirm the claim specifications from Insta360 for both the standalone Go 3 camera and the camera in combination with the Action Pod. In fact, we actually saw numbers slightly better than the claim specifications, at least at 1080p recording. Obviously, if you are recording in 2.7K, you will have a slight reduction, and obviously if you are recording in the free frame mode, your recording time will be further reduced. Now, it is important to point out that a test like this is somewhat unrealistic. Typically, the camera is not just filming a static scene for the entire duration of recording. So obviously this doesn't take into consideration things like movement in the scene, stabilization. Typically you're not recording all in one go. You're starting and stopping and having the camera powered on in between. So you typically would need to expect something less than these type of values. Okay, so much for the recording time tests. Let's move on to the charging tests. Okay, here is the test setup for my charging tests. I just completely drained the battery on the camera. It is completely empty, and at the same time I've also charged up the Action Pod, so it is completely full, but I've unplugged it. So we're going to see how fast the Action Pod can charge the camera when it is not powered on. Now, the only specification we have on this is that the Action Pod can be charged in 35 minutes, but I don't know if that means with power to the Action Pod or from the Action Pod, but I guess that's what we're going to find out. Okay, for our next test, I have once again emptied the battery of the camera. The Action Pod is completely full and I have it plugged in. So we're going to see basically if it charges any faster when using external power. I also have a little power meter attached here so I can see what wattage is being used in order to charge just the Action Pod. Okay, so now I have completely depleted both the camera and the Action Pod. So we're going to plug in and see how long it takes to charge both devices. Also, it will be interesting to see which one charges first. I'm assuming it's going to prioritize charging of the camera, but I guess we'll find out. Okay, and for our final charging test, we're going to charge up just the Action Pod on its own without the camera installed. Okay, quick timeout in the testing here. So we have now charged the Go 3 camera in 3 different tests, and in each of those tests we were right around 32 minutes, which is 3 minutes faster than Insta360 specified, so that's pretty good. We've also determined that it doesn't matter how you're charging the Go 3, whether you're charging it through the Action Pod on its own, a fully charged Action Pod plugged into AC power, or a completely empty Action Pod plugged into AC power. In all 3 of those instances, we got pretty much the same result at right around 32 minutes. So back to our testing, we still have 2 tests running where we are charging the Action Pod, so let's pick up the testing a little bit later on. So when it comes to charging the Action Pod, if you are charging the Go 3 camera and the Action Pod at the same time, apparently the charging is prioritized to the camera. So in our test, we saw a total time of 61 minutes to fully charge the Action Pod, which is still 2 minutes faster than Insta360 specified. However, if you are just charging the Action Pod on its own, in that test we were able to charge the Action Pod alone in just over 52 minutes. Now, the tests I did were really focused on charging the battery to 100%. I didn't do any testing specifically for the 80% mark, as I felt that most people are going to charge their battery to 100%. But what I can tell you is, for example, when charging the Go 3 camera, at around about 21-22 minutes, you could see a drop in the charging wattage, which is an indicator that the battery management system had kicked in and was starting to reduce the charging power, which typically happens at around about 80%. Also worth mentioning that the maximum wattage that I saw when charging both the camera and Action Pod together was around about 12 watts. So as long as you have a charger that can handle at least 12 watts, then you will be able to match these charging speeds. So that wraps it up for today. I hope you got some good information out of the video. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to give us a like and consider subscribing to the channel. If you have any questions, any comments, if you have any suggestions for future videos, please go ahead and drop those into the comment section. I love to hear from you. Otherwise, thank you for watching.